I was sitting in my tiny apartment, the flickering light above buzzing like it was mocking me, as I slurped another bite of instant noodles. Rent was due in 3 days, my job barely covered the basics, and I'd stopped checking my bank account because watching the balance shrink hurt more than hunger. Then my phone rang. It was my older sister, Chloe, the golden child, the one who wore designer clothes to brunch and vacationed in places I couldn't pronounce. We hadn't spoken in weeks. She smiled through the screen, a glass of champagne in her hand, her tone dripping with casual superiority. "So," she said, "are you enjoying your $500,000 trust fund?" I laughed, thinking it was another one of her sarcastic jokes. "What trust fund?" I said. Her smile froze for a second, her eyes flickering with something like confusion or guilt. "Wait, you didn't know?" she said softly. But before I could ask anything, she made some excuse about another call and hung up. I sat there in silence, the room suddenly heavier, the noodles cold. My heart pounded. What trust fund? The next day I couldn't focus on anything else. I tore through old drawers, boxes, and papers, searching for any trace of what she might have meant. That's when I found it, an old, yellowing envelope with my grandfather's lawyer's name printed on it. My grandfather had passed when I was a teenager, and I barely remembered much about his will. Inside the envelope was a document confirming that he had left both me and Chloe equal trust funds, each worth $500,000, to be released when we turned 25. I was 27 now. I should have received it 2 years ago. Heart racing, I called the law office listed on the paper. The same lawyer, now much older, answered. When I gave him my name, there was a long pause. "Ah, yes, well," he stammered, "according to our records, your trust was managed by your sister. You'd given written permission to have it reinvested under her care." My voice caught. "I never gave any permission," I said. There was silence. Then he whispered, "Miss, I think you should come in." Hours later, sitting across from that nervous old man, I saw the proof. My signature had been forged. Chloe had claimed I wanted her to handle my funds, and for 2 years, she'd used that money to invest in real estate. The profits had tripled. My inheritance had built her empire. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I spent a week collecting everything: documents, statements, emails. When I finally walked into her penthouse, she looked surprised but not scared. "I was going to tell you," she said quickly, her smile twitching. I dropped the folder on the counter. "You already did," I replied, "when you asked if I was enjoying my trust fund." Her face went pale. By the end of the week, her lawyer confirmed it all. She had no choice but to transfer my $500,000, and every penny of profit she made with it. The total was just over $2 million. When I left, she called after me, voice trembling, "We're still family, right?" I paused at the door, turned back, and said, "Of course. But now we're finally equals." Then I walked out, leaving her standing there in silence, surrounded by everything she built with what was never hers. The next few days passed in a blur. I couldn't stop replaying that conversation in my head, Chloe's smug tone, the words, "your $500,000 trust fund," echoing over and over like a cruel joke. Every time I thought about it, anger mixed with disbelief. My sister had always been the favorite, the perfect one, but I never thought she'd go this far. I decided I needed the truth, not rumors or assumptions. So, I went digging. The lawyer's office was in an old building downtown, with dusty windows and the faint smell of paper and time. When I introduced myself, the secretary looked startled. "You're Mr. Bennett's granddaughter," she asked quietly, almost like she'd seen a ghost. After a moment, she disappeared into the back and came out with an elderly man in a gray suit, "Mr. Carter, my grandfather's attorney." He looked at me over his glasses and sighed heavily. "You were bound to find out sooner or later," he said. "Please, sit down." He opened a folder, and there it was in black and white, my name, my grandfather's signature, the trust fund agreement. He explained that the fund had matured 2 years ago, on my 25th birthday. "Your sister came in with authorization papers," he said nervously. "She said you wanted her to handle the money while you got your life on track." My stomach turned. "And you believed her?" I asked. He lowered his eyes. "She had your signature." He slid the paper across the desk. One look at it, and my heart sank. The signature was almost perfect, but not quite. My sister had forged it. Mr. Carter looked ashamed. She's made quite a bit of money using both her and your funds, he said quietly. I suspect she never intended to tell you. I sat there for a long time, numb. My own sister had stolen from me, not because she needed it, but because she could. That night I couldn't sleep. Memories came flooding back. How she'd given me expensive birthday gifts out of nowhere, how she'd acted strangely generous lately. I realized those gifts were guilt wrapped in ribbons. By morning, my sadness had turned into calm determination. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I gathered every document, took photos of everything, and reached out to a new lawyer. We built the case quietly. When everything was ready, I visited her penthouse. She greeted me with that same fake warmth, the kind that hid sharp edges. You look tense, she said. I smiled. Not for long. Then I placed the folder in front of her. When she realized what I knew, her face lost all color. I was going to tell you eventually, she whispered. You already did, I said. You just didn't realize it. Within days, she was forced to return my trust and the profits, over $2 million. And for the first time in my life, I walked away richer in more ways than one. When the money finally hit my account, I didn't feel the rush I expected. $2 million. It looked unreal on the screen, just a row of numbers that should have changed everything. But all I felt was a strange emptiness, like I'd just ended a chapter of my life that had been written in someone else's handwriting. Chloe tried calling me that night, her name flashing across the screen again and again. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to hear her voice or her excuses. She had stolen years of opportunity from me, and no apology could erase that. The next morning, I went for a walk through the city, something I hadn't done in ages. Everything looked different, sharper somehow, the noise, the light, even the people rushing by. For the first time, I wasn't weighed down by money problems or fear of tomorrow. I could finally breathe. I bought a coffee from the little shop near my apartment, the same place where I used to count coins before ordering. The owner smiled when I handed him a $20 bill. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about the freedom to live without shame. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe was out there, spinning her version of the story. I knew her too well. She'd tell people it was a misunderstanding, that I'd overreacted. Maybe she'd even convince herself of it. But deep down, she knew what she'd done. A few days later, she sent me an email, long, emotional, full of words like mistake, forgiveness, and family. I read it twice, then deleted it. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Instead of revenge, I focused on rebuilding myself. I paid off every debt, helped my mom with her bills, and set up a savings plan that would make my grandfather proud. I even quit my dead-end job and started something of my own, a small creative agency that I'd dreamed about for years but could never afford to start. It felt good to build something honest with money that was rightfully mine. Months passed, and people began to see me differently, not as the struggling sibling, but as someone capable, confident, and free. One evening, while watching the sunset from my new apartment, I thought about Grandpa. Maybe this was his plan all along, not just to give me wealth, but to test what I'd do when faced with betrayal. Chloe and I haven't spoken since. Sometimes I miss her, or at least the version of her I used to believe in. But life moves on. I've learned that justice doesn't always roar like thunder, sometimes it arrives quietly, in the form of peace. And peace, I realized, is worth far more than any trust fund ever could be.